I am continuing to build this microservice that uses Kotlin and Spring, and the next step is to basically start wiring the controller with the service. So we managed to take an input, and now we need to pass that input a little bit down the stream all the way to the database. But we cannot access the database directly from the web layer. I mean, it's not a good practice. We need to create a service layer, and that service layer will be responsible for processing the data that comes from the database and maybe do some operations on it before it presents it back to the web layer. So what I'm going to do in this video is just to show how to do that wiring and how to use dependency injection in a Kotlin backend microservice. So I'm going to start by creating a package and I'm going to call it services. So our service layer is going to live in this package, and let's create something like film management service. So this film management service is going to have a function which is going to, let's say, process films for an input, which we say is going to be string, and maybe just let's keep it also, because in the endpoint we're returning a list of a string. Here we will also return a list of a string. I mean, we don't have to, but so what this function will do is it will talk to the database, it will take the data, it will do some manipulations on the data before it passes back to the front end. But for this video, all I'm going to do is just show the concept of dependency injection. So what we're going to do is to return a list of let's say return from service layer, and then I'm going to just reply this input. So it's going to be just a list with one element that does that for now. In order to make this injectable through dependency injection, we need to use the service annotation, because it's a service. So if we go now back to our controller, how do we inject this in here? So in Java we would create a field, etc. But in Kotlin we can just do it like this. We can create a value, and we're going to say that this value is, we're going to call it film management service, and it's of type film management service. Okay, now to test that it works, instead of returning that empty list that we had earlier, we're going to use it, and we're going to process the films for the input. So notice that that there is a type mismatch here, because we are taking a nullable input, and Kotlin doesn't really like this kind of nullable inputs. I'm not going to deal with this kind of validation right now. My point now is just to do dependency injection, so that's why I'm going to force this input into the service layer. But of course, there will be other ways of dealing with this without having to force it. So that's it. We don't need anything else. We don't need an auto wire, because by default In the same way, we also don't need auto-wire in Java if it's marked as service. So the same thing here in Kotlin. So just the service annotation and injection in the constructor with val. Val makes it mandatory. And let's run the app and see what happens. So the app is running, and this is the input that we gave earlier. Search something. See, now it's telling us return from service layer something. So that's how we do dependency injection with the Spring in Kotlin.